Humans are not the fastest, nor the strongest, nor the most durable or even the smartest race. They do not proliferate quickly, live very venerably, or evolve rapidly at will. They variously track higher on all of those scales, certainly making them one of the most formidable species among the stars, but none of that is what makes them the most terrifying predators in the known universe. As humans would put it, the 6 sensory groups are touch, taste, sight, smell, hearing, and place. There are many more specific senses, of course, but each is a subset of one of those, such as the sense of temperature being part of touch, or the sense of motion being part of place. There is, however, a 7th sense that all humans possess, and only humans possess: precognition. Several thousand cycles ago, a ship of the Tilgot was investigating the human homeworld long before they came to be, and found many species of similar build to modern humans proliferating across the planet. They were all variations of the same evolutionary line, but not quite sentient. Seeing potential to corral them into a docile slave race, they collected a few specimens to see which genetic variations had the most desirable traits, and began experimenting with the Terran genome. They wanted a race capable enough to complete nearly any task they might be assigned, but not innately intelligent enough to defy their masters. They removed genetic markers for dangerous traits like claws and fangs, and then crippled their infants to prevent escapees from becoming invasive to the local environments, wherever they may be. As fits the Tilgot reputation, it was masterful bioengineering, but there was a single flaw. One of the newly spawned hominids possessed a genetic mutation that seemingly gave them the ability to predict future events. This was not immediately apparent to the Tilgot, and all evidence had been written off simply as savantism. As such, the Tilgot released the first humans to their homeworld to reproduce, and eventually become a valuable source of labour amongst the galaxy, once they'd reached significant enough numbers to collect. Following their standard procedure for such ventures, the Tilgot left the world under the eye of an AI, meant only to alert them of anything that might spoil their investment. A few hundred cycles later, they were alerted that the planet had begun to show signs of civilization, which should never have occurred. Assuming another race had missed, or more likely ignored, their claim to the planet, they returned with a small task force of assault craft, should they need to deal with them aggressively. Instead, they found that their creations had spread across the globe, and advanced far faster than even the most intelligent known sentients would have in that time. Still primitive and restricted to simple wood and stone, but a dangerous development nonetheless. As per galactic treaties, no species may subjugate or enslave another without formal declaration of war, requiring witnesses from at least 3 non-party races. As an uncontacted race would have no representation, the war could not be approved by the Assembly. This was a problem for the Tilgot because, before bioengineering, the various species of the world had been pre-sentient, therefore outside jurisdiction of the treaties. A clearly sentient species, however, could not be enslaved, and furthermore, resource rights to the entire local cluster would be lost. Attempting to hide their mistake before it was made known to the wider galaxy, the Tilgot had their assault craft divert an asteroid to strike the planet, in an attempt to wipe the slate clean. The impact caused massive climate change across the biosphere that decimated the populations of all life on the planet. But unexpectedly enough, humans survived to not only replenish their numbers, but allow them to advance further still. The Tilgot tried again by setting off a supervolcano, and both again, watching the evidence each time they returned and witnessed as the humans somehow managed to predict what decisions would lead to another advancement. Even lacking the Tilgot's own genetic memory traits, they passed their knowledge on to subsequent generations, despite the crippling of their young. It was in the young that they found the truth of their mistake. Lacking the physical ability necessary to survive in any capacity for the first several cycles, the species had adapted to continued development of the brain far beyond infancy, particularly the enlarged frontal cortex. This has been well documented to be the source of sentience, or at least its equivalent in other species. All sentient species in the galaxy evolved as predators due to the increased need for the brain to predict the actions of its prey and prepare the appropriate reaction. This would eventually lead to planning and reasoning, and the building blocks of sentience. Humans have a frontal cortex so highly developed that what most species would take rotations to calculate and predict, they can often do offhanded in moments. While most species could not develop any feasible ranged weapons at war until the development of advanced mathematics, humans could sling stones at avian prey while in motion and predicted where large beasts would flee over long distances, or before they had even invented clothing. For the tile god, the species they had created was beginning to become too expensive to hide, and while resetting a biosphere was doable without being noticed on the galactic stage, destroying one would be troubling to say the least. But better to lose a single planet than the entire cluster. The tile god, with their final attempt, decided to crash a comet into the planet's moon, on a path that would then in turn cause the moon to collide with the planet. Gravity tugs were dispatched to gradually curve the comet into a collision course to better avoid any unexpected witnesses. As if by cosmic coincidence, the new path accidentally converged with a major hyperlane, and an antimatter fuel ship collided with it, destroying both of them along with many more, and slingshotting the situation to the forefront of the galaxy's awareness. The debacle immediately cost the tile god much more than they would have ever lost had they simply openly admitted to everything from the start. The tile god were immediately sanctioned, and the entire sector of space around the human homeworld was quarantined, while the Galactic Assembly reviewed the records turned over by the tile god. The ruling against them for the destruction of the fuel ship, and cascading damage to everything within 500 stellar units along the hyperlane, was damning. They were forced to inevitably sell themselves into indentured servitude, to pay off the debt that could never be repaid. While the Assembly prioritised matters of blame and repayment, the matter of the fledgling sapiens at the centre of the events was entirely overlooked. After all, new sapiens blinked in and out of existence frequently, and few ever advanced far enough to even be worth contacting. Those that did took millions of cycles to stumble into electricity, let alone any form of communication that could be interpreted into galactic common. They had expected to have ages to come back to the small world, after they settled the financial matters first. The quarantine enacted after the hyperlane disaster had left their corner of the galaxy practically uninhabited and untouched, and with the cloud of antimatter blocking the hyperlane, it stayed that way until the Assembly ordered a proper cleanup. By the time the tile god's sentence was carried out, the Galactic Assembly found themselves facing an entirely different monster than had ever been expected. The humans had advanced. They had advanced into a thriving interstellar civilization. Not just one civilization either, but several independent states of their own. Their ability to predict possible futures inevitably gave way to the means of creating said futures. While every sentient race was capable of planning and devising new means of accomplishing goals, they did so out of immediate need or convenience. None did so with the foresight of humanity. The disastrous antimatter explosion that ravaged the hyperlane and facilitated the humans' isolation didn't go undetected by them. Their primitive detection systems registered the energy release and caught their attention like lightning to an iron rod. The whole of humanity suddenly became aware that they were not only not alone, but that they had been in the direct path of imminent destruction. They leapt forward into the stars with all their intuition, which they had mistaken for imagination and ingenuity. They imagined reviving the reassembled dead with lightning, and manufactured their medicine into defibrillation and artificial organs. They imagined being able to fly like insects and avians, and navigated their means of transit to hypersonic jet propulsion. They imagined statues that could think and function autonomously, and fabricated their machinations into robotics and cybernetics. They imagined harnessing the power of stars, and delineated the secrets of fusion power. They imagined faster-than-light travel, and illuminated their physics to the warping of space and time. They imagined instantaneous communication, and compiled quantum mechanics into the creation of an Ansible. It was the humans who made first contact with the Galactic Assembly, much to the shock of every other sapient race. Humanity had used its time to not only advance to a level of technology almost on par with the Assembly, but had predicted where and how to communicate with them once the cleanup of the hyperlane was underway. As far as the rest of the galaxy was concerned, a new galactic power emerged from the ether overnight. a power that proved proficiency in nearly everything they came in contact with. Anything humans didn't know, they quickly figured out, and anything they couldn't do, they quickly made something to do it for them. In physical ability, they were certainly not the strongest or the fastest. They didn't have the most powerful weapons and armor, and there were ships far larger and more advanced. But all of that counts for little in combat if your opponent knows what you are going to do before you do. Even more so if your opponent is the one who planned for you to do it. Their ability to predict what others might do, and what events might unfold, was so ingrained in their society that the most simple spawnling games involved divining where their opponents might hide from a predator. By adolescence, most were already so proficient in prediction that they played dozens of advanced simulations that followed various sets of goals and restrictions, involving everything from combat and commerce to technological development and social engineering. They even bestowed the title of Grand Master to those so proficient in their clairvoyance that their greatest competition wasn't each other, but advanced artificial intelligences that could calculate every possible move faster than their own minds. Humans were the most cunning diplomats and merchants, because they could guess how far to negotiate before settling any deal. Humans made the best security forces, because before danger, they always felt their hair stand up. Humans seemingly avoided disasters and created miracles, seemingly on a whim based on nothing more than a gut feeling. Humans navigated the ins and outs of societal norms and taboos simply by feeling the vibe. Even works of art or ability they themselves deemed masterful were often attributed to simply being in the zone. In the span of only a few human centuries, the new galactic standard of time, humanity had seemingly conquered all of known space simply by existing. They may have been products of the Thai gods' less than savoury business practices, but even they were freed by their creation, as the humans saw no need to enslave what could be just as easily guided to a better future. A future of their own design.